Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to talk about some knives today and show some examples from the collection. Saturdays are for the bone boys, and these examples I'm going to show you are some of my favorite pieces. It's taken me quite a while to gather up the ones I have. I'm pretty proud of them. And the history is very rich, and like most knife or cutlery company histories, it is very entangled with other companies and other members of, or founding members of other companies. But anyways, Saturdays for the bone boys, and these are going to be antique examples. Now the bone on this one, well, all of them, pretty well perfect. And you can see somebody has reshaped this main blade and done some polishing on this knife. Little, borderline sloppy on the wobble there. That one could be tightened up some. But still good snap half stops on this example. Now, let's see if we can get this in here. Electric Cutco, Walden, New York. The Walden mark knives are going to be 1910 to 1920. This one does have a little bit of rust issues in the inside. I have not got around to cleaning the inside of this one. So somebody was pretty fond of this example. Broke the tip off and reprofiled it. I don't know what the crazy dip is in the blade. Maybe they had a round sharpening stone. That's my guess. Or maybe they just got a little crazy with the grinder when they were reprofiling this and sharpening it, because the pin blade's actually in pretty good shape. An electric Cutco. Now, we'll be reading from Goins today because they have, or Goins has the most complete history out of all of my reference books. Electric Cutlery Co., Walden, New York, circa 1910 to 1920. Now, the electric trademark started earlier, as far back as 1873. Used on razors and all kinds of other cutlery examples. And there's also an electric brand from Imperial, which, Providence, Rhode Island, Imperial. That is not to be confused with Electric Cutlery Company. So, the trademark electric was first used by the New York City-based importing firm of Friedman and Lauderjung. They started using the marking in 1873. By 1889, the Electric Cutlery Company was a corporation in New York with C.B. Fuller, secretary and treasurer. In 1890, the firm was moved from 236 Bank Street, Newark, New Jersey. Lewis C. Fuller was president of the Newark operation, Edward Whitehead vice president, James E. Fuller secretary, and Clifford B. Fuller treasurer. While in New York, the Electric Cutlery was a jobbing and import firm. In Newark, they are listed in the city directory as cutlery manufacturers. The firm moved in 1892 to 202 Dickerson, corner of 4th. In 1902, another move was made, this time to 47 4th Street, and James E. Fuller was president. James Fuller, along with his brother Clifford, purchased the New York Knife Company of Walden, New York in 1903. They operated both firms until 1910, when the Newark operation was closed. Electric knives marked Walden were produced in the New York Knife Company plant as a second line to their Hammer brand knives. The electric trademark was used until about 1920. So, Friedman and Lauderjung started the electric trademark. And was later picked up by the Fuller brothers. Friedman and Lauderjung, they were just jobbers, and most of their knives were imported from Germany. And interestingly enough, JBF Champlin, who was one of the reasons the Case brothers and Case W.R. Case and Sons got started. He was a salesman for Friedman and Lauderjung. But anyways, those are tangents. Electric Cutco, there's enough history just in here to not be chasing other companies. It's really easy to do when you're researching knives. And to me, when I start chasing the tangents from these companies, I start confusing the details. So when I research these old knives, I do my best to just focus on the knife, where it come from, and where it ended. If not, I start getting dates mixed up in my head really easy. So I'm going to try to apply that same logic in this video, even though we've already chased a tangent. But anyways, here's another example of this swell end jackknife. This one in a little better condition as far as the main blade goes. Match strike, long pull. These are pretty well identical knives. This one having a little more cosmetic issues on the bolsters. Like somebody liked to peck with this one. But much fuller blade. You see this wedging here that is absent on this knife. Scratched and sharpened, but survived very, very well. Good half stops. Very slight wobble compared to this example. Little bit of peaking on this pen blade. Just wipe some oil off. Electric Cutco, Walden, New York. Pretty cool that I've come across two of these. The peaking on the pen blades is actually pretty even. And one more example for you, and we'll dive into a little bit more history. I'm kind of getting a little windy on this one. Here's a nice Stockman, same shield. I mean, these shields are all identical. The police badge shield, I think, is what you would call these. And this is another Walden Mark knife. It does not have the match strike long pull, but all three of these are from the 1910 to 20 era of the Walden produced electric Cutcos. Now, this one is probably in the best shape at all of them. I'll wipe some oil off of this one too, just a little bit. And we'll show these stamps. A lot cleaner specimen here. Electric Cutco. A lot cleaner stamps. Now this is where it gets neat. Well, in my opinion anyway. But we'll go ahead and do the close-up on this one like we did the others. Microfiber. Now this might be hard to convey. But this one still has the electric trademark etch on the main blade. I'll try to show it best I can. Before electric it says trade, and after electric it says mark. I don't know if more or less zoom is going to be the answer on showing this etch. I'm just going to have to pan right there. Mark. And then electric. And right up here, you see trade. And it is in this same font. Now, New York Knife Co. has its own history. Before the Fuller brothers bought them. So the electric trademark was its own thing by Friedman and Lauderjung. And New York Knife Company started as its own thing. And the Fuller brothers wound up with the electric trademark. Started their own cutlery company instead of just importing German-made and Sheffield-made knives. Once the 1890 tariffs come about, started producing them in Newark. And then once they bought New York Knife Company, started producing the electric knives in Walden as a lesser brand of New York Knife Company's Hammer brand. Hammer brand was their top of the line, kind of like Case Select Knives, you know, top tier. New York Knife Co. Hammer brand, electric Cutco. These were inexpensive knives, and the quality is still awesome. So, we will talk about New York Knife Company later on and show some examples. But here is the excerpt from some of the New York Knife Co. history. Thomas W. Bradley, son of the founder, became president in 1879. He ran the firm until 1903, when he sold out to the Fuller Brothers of New York City. The Fuller Brothers also owned the Electric Knife Company of Newark, New Jersey, and operated both firms until about 1910. Then they closed the Newark plant and began making the electric mark knives in the Walden factory. In 1920, the electric marking was dropped, and the marking Wallkill River Works was adopted. Both of these markings were a second line of lesser quality and price than the Hammer brand knives. They continued until 1931, when the factory was closed due to bankruptcy. So, some awesome examples of the electric Cutco knives from the Walden era of 1910 to 1920. The electric trademark was started by Friedman and Lauderjung. Jobbers was picked up by the Fuller brothers, who were also jobbers and importers. That after the tariffs were placed in 1890, started up their own manufacturing in Newark, bought New York Knife Company. Fuller Brothers bought New York Knife Company and merged the production of the electric knives from Newark into the Walden factory of New York Knife Co. And later produced electric Cutco, the New York Knife Co. and Hammer brand lines, and later Wallkill River Works. Anyways, guys, this one's getting lengthy. Saturdays for the Bone Boys. Here's my electric Cutco examples. and some history on the electric Cutco beginnings and the end. Hope y'all found this informative, and we tried not to chase too many tangents, even though we got off on a couple. This is Hillbilly Proud. Thank y'all for checking it out. Y'all come back now, you hear? Y'all have a good one.